You may recognize her. She's a famous actress and producer there in Hollywood. Actress Diane Keaton has now died at the age of 79.
Rumors are swirling across Hollywood, and fans everywhere are in disbelief after shocking reports emerged about Diane Keaton. Known for her iconic roles and radiant personality, the beloved actress has suddenly become the subject of heartbreaking headlines. Whispers surrounding her alleged death have spread like wildfire. But what's the real story behind these claims? Has the world truly lost one of its most cherished stars? Or is there more to this mystery than meets the eye? Today we uncover the shocking truth behind Diane Keaton's fate, the mystery of Diane Keaton's passing. Hollywood is drowning in grief as tributes to Diane Keaton flood every corner of social media. Fans are heartbroken, but for her co-stars, the ones who truly knew her, the pain runs even deeper. Bette Midler, her First Wives Club co-star, shared a message that left everyone in tears. She called Diane hilarious, completely original, and without a trace of jealousy. But it was her final line that hit hardest. She was without guile. Those words echo louder than any headline because they capture who Diane truly was: pure, honest, and unapologetically herself. In a world built on image and illusion, Diane stood apart. She didn't play Hollywood's games or hide behind a carefully crafted persona. What you saw on screen was who she was off it: fearless, quirky, and authentic. That rare honesty made her not just a movie star, but a mirror for millions who saw their imperfect, beautiful selves reflected in her work. Kimberly Williams Paisley, who played her daughter in Father of the Bride, called working with Diane one of the greatest gifts of my life. For her, sharing the screen with such a legend was like stepping into a masterclass in grace and creativity. Diane had a way of making even the most nervous newcomer feel confident, treating everyone, from young actors to the film crew, with equal warmth and respect. That was her quiet power. She didn't just light up a scene, she lifted everyone in it. As tributes pour in from Viola Davis, Reese Witherspoon, Josh Gad, and countless others, a portrait emerges, not of a distant icon, but of a deeply human woman. They remember her laughter, her curiosity, her kindness, and her ability to transform a chaotic setting into a place of calm. She wasn't chasing fame, she was chasing truth, and that's what made her unforgettable. Yet beneath the outpouring of love lies an unsettling silence. Diane Keaton, who famously never married, lived life entirely on her own terms. She adopted 2 children, built a home filled with laughter, and refused to conform to anyone's expectations of what a woman's life should look like. She defied every rule Hollywood wrote for women, choosing independence over convention, freedom over conformity. Over the years, she was romantically linked to major Hollywood legends like Woody Allen, Al Pacino, and Warren Beatty. But Diane never let her relationships define her identity. She remained fiercely independent, carving a legacy built not on who she loved, but on how she lived. That strength, that quiet rebellion, made her an icon far beyond film, a role model for women who dared to stand alone and still shine. Now, fans have turned into investigators, combing through her last Instagram posts for hidden clues. Her final photos show her radiant and full of life, wearing her signature hats, laughing freely, and glowing with the same vibrant spirit that defined her for decades. How could someone who seemed so alive be gone so suddenly? The silence from her family adds to the mystery. There's been no cause of death revealed, no official statement beyond a request for privacy. And while that's understandable, it has left a void that speculation eagerly fills. Was it something sudden? A private illness? Or something no one saw coming? Every hour brings a new theory. Some recall her candid interviews about aging and health. Others wonder if her final days held signs we all missed. But one truth rises above the noise. Diane Keaton was irreplaceable. In an industry often obsessed with fame and facades, She stood for authenticity, artistry, and heart. Directors who worked with her call her fearless, a woman who came to set with creative ideas that elevated entire productions. Co-stars remember how she always made space for others to shine, never needing to dominate on the spotlight. In a culture where attention is currency, Diane proved that true greatness doesn't need to scream. It simply exists. And now, as the world mourns her loss, one question refuses to fade away, echoing in every tribute and every unanswered headline. What really happened in those final hours? What secret might still be hiding behind that unforgettable smile? Stay with us. The enigmatic life and silent goodbye of Diane Keaton. The world woke up to shocking news that rippled through California and far beyond. Within moments, television anchors, journalists, and fans scrambled to confirm what no one wanted to believe. Diane Keaton, the timeless star whose laughter, vulnerability, and style had shaped decades of film, was gone. The official statement from her family was brief and heartbreakingly vague. Yes, she had passed away, but there was no mention of how or why, no cause of death, no glimpse into her final hours, just a polite plea for privacy. That silence sent shockwaves through Hollywood, leaving everyone asking the same question: what really happened to Diane Keaton? Born Diane Hall in Los Angeles in 1946, she seemed destined to stand out from the crowd. But her rise to fame wasn't some glittering fairy tale. Before the lights, the cameras, and the applause, there were endless auditions, closed doors, and rejection letters that would have crushed most dreamers. Yet Diane wasn't most dreamers. She was restless, determined, and slightly eccentric, qualities that would later define her screen presence. When she packed her bags for New York, she wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing a sense of belonging. While others her age were settling down, she was struggling through acting classes, scraping by on odd jobs, and wondering if she'd ever make it. There were times when she almost gave up, nights when she questioned whether the sacrifices were worth it. But that same spark, the one that made her different, kept her going. And when opportunity finally knocked, it changed everything. In 1972, she landed the role of Kay Adams in The Godfather, playing opposite Al Pacino's cold yet magnetic Michael Corleone. The film didn't just make her a star, it made her unforgettable. She reprised the role in the sequels, portraying a woman torn between love and morality, trapped in a world ruled by loyalty and crime. But even as audiences admired her performance, another story was unfolding behind the scenes, a creative partnership that would redefine American cinema. When Diane teamed up with Woody Allen, something electric happened. Their chemistry, both on and off the screen, was impossible to ignore. Annie Hall in 1977 wasn't just a film, it was a revolution. Diane's portrayal of the quirky, vulnerable, and irresistibly charming Annie Hall didn't just win her an Academy Award, it started a cultural movement. Her style, those baggy men's suits, floppy hats, and witty one-liners, became a symbol of individuality. Everyone wanted to talk like her, dress like her, be her. But few knew that Annie Hall wasn't just a character. It was Diane herself. Woody Allen had written the role for her, inspired by her quirks, her speech patterns, even her real last name, Hall. Their collaboration blurred the lines between fiction and reality, love and art. Rumors of their romance added another layer of fascination, fueling debates that still linger today. Success followed success. 4 Academy Award nominations, Golden Globes, BAFTAs. Hollywood showered her with praise. Yet through it all, Diane stayed grounded. While others drowned in the chaos of celebrity life, she remained humble, authentic, and oddly shy about her own fame. Her co-stars described her as refreshingly human, approachable, funny, and endlessly curious. She had this rare gift of making everyone around her feel at ease, as if they weren't in the presence of an icon, but an old friend. Her filmography became a mirror of her evolution, complex, funny, and deeply relatable. In Father of the Bride, she melted hearts as the kind and patient mother opposite Steve Martin. The First Wives Club turned her into a symbol of strength and female friendship. And in Something's Gotta Give, her chemistry with Jack Nicholson reminded audiences that love and laughter don't fade with age. Each performance revealed a different piece of who she was. Fearless, yet fragile. Confident, yet deeply introspective. But as her fame grew, so did the mystery surrounding her private life. She never married, never followed the Hollywood pattern of grand romances or public heartbreaks. Instead, she carved her own path, one defined by independence, creativity, and quiet rebellion. Friends often said that Diane's life off-camera was far more intriguing than any role she ever played. She loved photography, architecture, and her mother's journals, which later inspired her deeply personal memoir, Then Again. Through it, she explored themes of memory, family, and the haunting shadow of Alzheimer's that claimed her mother's mind, a subject that shaped her view of life, love, and loss. For Diane Keaton, every choice seemed deliberate, every silence meaningful. She wasn't just an actress, she was an enigma, an artist who lived by her own rules. And as the world tries to piece together her final story, one question still lingers, louder than ever. What was the secret behind her unconventional happiness? How does she choose love without marriage? Was it loneliness she embraced or freedom she mastered? Keep watching to find out. Diane Keaton, the woman who redefined love without a ring. For all her fame, success, and timeless charm, Diane Keaton never chased the dream that so many believed completed a woman's story: marriage. To her, love was not about fairy tale endings or perfect partners. It was a journey of discovery, heartbreak, and profound lessons that shaped both the woman and the artist she became. Surrounded by Hollywood's brightest lights, she remained one of the few who dared to define love on her own terms: raw, honest, and fiercely independent. Her story begins on the Broadway stage in the late 1960s, where a young Diane Hall, before the world knew her as Keaton, first met a man who would change her life: Woody Allen. Their connection sparked instantly, not just as lovers, but as creative partners. On stage in Play It Again, Sam, their chemistry was undeniable. A strange mix of awkward humor, tenderness, and truth. Allen, captivated by her offbeat wit and spontaneous energy, saw in her something rare: authenticity. When he later wrote Annie Hall, he didn't just craft a character, he captured Diane herself. The clothes, the mannerisms, the vulnerability. It was all her. The movie became a love letter to their complicated bond, blurring the lines between fiction and reality. Even after their romance faded, their friendship endured. Diane often called Woody one of the most important people in her life, and he never stopped referring to her as his muse. Together, they created something that transcended their personal relationship, a portrait of love that was messy, imperfect, but achingly real. Then came Al Pacino, the man who would ignite a different kind of passion. They met while filming The Godfather, and what began as mutual admiration quickly turned into a whirlwind romance. He was intense, magnetic, unpredictable. The very opposite of the calm she tried to maintain. Their love burned bright, but was constantly on the edge of collapse. Keaton once admitted she wanted to marry him, but Pacino wasn't ready for commitment. When it finally ended, she said simply, "Al was the love of my life." Yet even in heartbreak, she never let pain consume her. Instead, she transformed it, pouring that ache into her performances, channeling the vulnerability of lost love into characters who seemed to live her emotions on screen. Her next great romance was with Warren Beatty. a man as brilliant as he was, complicated. They met while filming Reds, where Beatty not only directed her but starred opposite her. Their connection was electric, a mix of admiration, creativity, and chaos. He had a reputation as one of Hollywood's most notorious womanizers, but Diane saw beyond that. She often described him as generous, intelligent, and endlessly fascinating. Still, their relationship, like all her others, couldn't last. The intensity that drew her in eventually became the force that pushed her away. Looking back, Diane spoke of those relationships not with regret, but with insight. Each man, she said, taught her something about herself, how easily love could blur into sacrifice, and how vital it was to never lose one's sense of self. Her devotion to these powerful men once defined her, but eventually she realized her truest power came from standing alone. Her decision never to marry baffled many, especially in an industry that often equated success with settling down. But Diane was clear about her reasons. "I'm too independent," she once said. "I love being alone." Marriage, in her eyes, required giving up a part of herself she wasn't willing to surrender. Her solitude wasn't loneliness, it was freedom. She filled her life with creativity, friendships, and later, something even more meaningful: motherhood. In her 50s, when most actresses were stepping away from the spotlight, Diane stepped into an entirely new role. She adopted her daughter Dexter in 1996 and her son Duke in 2001, calling it the best decision she ever made. Motherhood softened her, grounding her in a love that didn't demand performance or perfection. She often said her children gave her a sense of peace she never found in romance. Through them, she discovered a deeper purpose, one that wasn't about being adored, but about giving love freely and unconditionally. Her reflections on love and solitude would later weave into her art. In films like Annie Hall, Something's Gotta Give, and Baby Boom, she captured the complexities of womanhood, loneliness, courage, humor, and the eternal search for meaning. Each role felt like a page from her diary, a confession written for anyone who had ever loved, lost, or chosen to stand alone. Diane Keaton proved that fulfillment doesn't have to come from marriage or romance. It can come from understanding who you are and embracing every imperfect piece of yourself. But perhaps the real story of her heart, the one she only shared through her words, holds even deeper truths still waiting to be uncovered. What secret feelings were hidden between the pages she left behind? Stick around for what's next. Diane Keaton, writing to remember what time tried to erase. When Diane Keaton released Then Again in 2011, it wasn't the kind of memoir people expected from a Hollywood star. It wasn't full of gossip, red carpet secrets, or the glamour of fame. Instead, it was something far more intimate, a daughter's search for meaning in the shadow of her mother's life. Written with warmth, vulnerability, and that unmistakable Keaton charm, the book became a reflection not just of her career, but of her family, her fears, and the complicated bond that connects mothers and daughters across generations. The heart of Then Again beats through her mother, Dorothy Hall, a woman whose story might have been lost to time had her daughter not uncovered it. Dorothy had spent her life writing, over 90 journals filled with dreams, sketches, memories, and silent regrets. In those pages, Diane found more than just her mother's words. She found a reflection of her own soul. Dorothy had once dreamed of being an artist but gave it up to raise a family, a decision that haunted her quietly through the years. When Keaton read those journals after her mother's death, it was as if she were meeting her all over again. This time, not as a daughter looking up, but as a woman, finally understanding. Then Again wasn't written in perfect order or polished prose. It was woven like a patchwork of moments, thoughts, and emotions. Diane didn't want her readers to simply read her memories. She wanted them to feel them, the confusion, the longing, the bittersweet ache of remembering. Her mother's words blended with her own, forming a conversation across time. A mother who once gave up her dream and a daughter who spent her life chasing it. There's a powerful line that echoes through the memoir. Keaton's confession that much of her life had been about wanting to be seen. It's a need she recognized she shared with her mother. Dorothy's journals carried the same plea for acknowledgement, quiet questions about whether her life had truly mattered. Through these parallels, Keaton revealed something universal, the way daughters often inherit not just their mother's features, but their deepest insecurities, their unspoken hopes, their silent yearning to be remembered. But the story takes a heartbreaking turn. In her mother's later years, Alzheimer's disease began to erase everything Dorothy once was. The woman who had filled pages with words and sketches slowly lost her grip on memory, her identity slipping away like film reels fading into white. For Diane, watching that transformation was unbearable. The disease didn't just steal her mother, it forced her to face the fragility of the human mind itself. Who are we when memory disappears? What remains when our stories fade? Then again became her answer to those questions. Through writing, she tried to preserve what her mother could no longer remember. Each sentence became a thread, stitching together the pieces of a life unraveling under the weight of time. In doing so, Diane turned her grief into something lasting, a work of love and remembrance that spoke to anyone who's ever watched someone they love vanish behind the fog of Alzheimer's. She wrote not only about her mother's decline, but also about her own guilt and longing, the regret of missed moments, of being too busy chasing fame while time with her mother slipped away. Yet her honesty carried healing. Writing became her way of saying goodbye while refusing to forget. It was, in many ways, her greatest act of love. In her later books, like Let's Just Say It Wasn't Pretty and Brother and Sister, Keaton continued exploring the same fragile themes: aging, family, self-image, and the search for meaning. But none carried the same raw pulse as Then Again. That book was her confession, her closure, and her connection to the woman who shaped her life from behind the curtain. Even after her mother's death, Keaton remained an advocate for Alzheimer's awareness, often reflecting on the painful truth that memory defines us. "I write to remember," she once said, "because forgetting feels like losing myself." And in remembering her mother, Diane Keaton found herself, one page, one memory, one revelation at a time. Now, let's reveal the details about how her authenticity continues to shape art, fashion, and identity, even after she's gone. Stay tuned. The timeless rebel who redefined style and strength. Diane Keaton's influence stretched far beyond the silver screen. It reshaped fashion, redefined femininity, and inspired an entirely new kind of confidence. Her style wasn't just about clothes, it was about identity. The oversized blazers, crisp white shirts, tailored vests, and those trademark wide-brimmed hats became more than wardrobe choices. They became a cultural statement. Keaton turned menswear into something poetic and powerful, blending grace with rebellion. She made it acceptable, even beautiful, for women to express strength without losing softness. Fashion magazines adored her. Designers praised her originality. Even decades after Annie Hall, young women still borrowed her look, layering pieces with the same fearless mix of comfort and charm. To them, she wasn't a relic of the past. She was timeless. In a world obsessed with youth and conformity, Keaton's style said the opposite, that aging isn't a fade-out, it's an evolution. She didn't follow trends, she set them. Even in her 70s, she graced magazine covers and red carpets with the same quirky elegance that once captivated audiences in the 1970s. Every appearance reminded the world that authenticity never goes out of fashion. But Keaton's artistry went far deeper than fashion. She was a filmmaker, producer, author, and performer, a woman who understood the creative world from every side. Her directorial work displayed her sharp instincts and subtle storytelling. Her memoirs opened the door into her mind, revealing her humor, vulnerability, and reflections on family, fame, and self-acceptance. And when she lent her voice to narrate Joan Didion's work, critics praised her ability to make literature sound alive, proving that her talent was never confined to the screen. Hollywood often tries to categorize people, to fit them neatly into roles that are easy to label, but Diane Keaton refused to be boxed in. She was proof that you could be successful without selling your soul, charming without pretending, and artistic without being tortured by the weight of genius. At 79, she was still inspiring millions, with new generations discovering her iconic performances and seeing in her a model of independence and creativity. Her passing feels like more than the loss of an actress. It feels like the dimming of a light that once illuminated Hollywood's golden era. She bridged generations, having worked with legends while becoming one herself. As tributes pour in and film retrospectives fill screens worldwide, her spirit lingers in every laugh, every suit, every bold choice that dared to defy expectations. Because Diane Keaton didn't just act, she transformed. She permitted women to be unapologetically themselves, to age gracefully, and to find power in authenticity. Her work and style live on, untouched by time, whispering to the world that individuality is its own kind of beauty. Diane Keaton wasn't just a star, she was a revolution wrapped in a turtleneck and topped with a hat. But what made her charm so effortlessly eternal? We would love to hear your thoughts below. So, don't forget to like and subscribe.